I 24M want to send my 51F mom one last letter before I cut all contact. What do you guys think? Hi everyone, this is my first time posting, so I apologize ahead of time if the writing isn't the best. I and my family have been estranged for almost a year now. And I want to send one last letter telling my mother all of the things that, it seems, no one else is willing to say. Is this a good idea or am I just wasting my time? I'll back up for some context. My wife, now 22F, I'll call her Chrissy, and I got married a year and a half after we met at school. While in school, my mom, I'll call her Leah, saw Chrissy walking on a sidewalk while we were driving down a road and she claimed she sensed evil in her. They never talked to each other, other than a casual hi when I first moved into school and Chrissy happened to be walking by. This was in 2019, right before all the craziness. While in school, Chrissy and I became best friends and even ended up talking about marriage and what we were looking for in a partner, before we parted ways for the summer. I told my parents in the summer of 2020 after Chrissy, and I had done the long-distance thing for a few months, that I couldn't be away from her and I couldn't live without her and I wanted to marry her. As of yet, my family had not met Chrissy. This was for two reasons. First, COVID. She couldn't drive and she was multiple states away, so no one could bring her. The second reason was because my mom had already decided she didn't like her because of her single interaction, and any woman I considered marrying, my mom and dad wanted her to come to our house and spend some time with them so that my whole family could approve of her. I was told many times that they know what is best for me. I was 20 at the time. However, I didn't agree with this and told them that they trained me to be independent and to know myself well enough to be able to identify what I need most in a partner. There were several talks after this about how she needed to come down and spend time with the rest of the family and make sure they liked her too. Long story short, we got married. My parents seemed to change their tune and treated my wife extremely kindly and showed us respect for the most part. Well, Chrissy and I moved to where she is from, rented a home and were independent for 2 years. Then, right at the end of 2022, the economy got worse, and even though I was working 2 jobs while my wife took care of our son at home, we couldn't make ends meet. My mom had come up and visited a couple of times and my whole family had made the trip one Christmas to see us. In all honesty, my wife and I thought they had gotten over their prejudices against Chrissy since we loved each other and had chosen to be together, and that was more important. So, when we were a month from being homeless, they extended the offer to use their spare room for our family of 3 until we could get on our feet again. They said that we could help when we could with bills, but there would be no expectations as we were trying to get back on our feet. We also found out around this time that Chrissy was pregnant with our second child. We took up their offer because it was that or be on the streets. And we had no indication that it would be anything other than nice and respectful. About a month after we had moved there, things started to change. They would make sideways remarks or comments about how we were parenting, how we were organizing our things in their space incorrectly. Many times we listened and changed at their request, apologizing for doing it wrong. I know, comments to Chrissy about how much time I was away from them, and they wanted me to spend more time with them exclusively. My wife and child are my first priority, and I was working a full-time job, and so was my wife at a fast food restaurant, while I was taking evening classes and she was caring for our son, and pregnant. So, when I got home, I made sure I spent time with my family and took care of my wife, and then I spent time with my siblings and parents as much as I could. Well, the snide remarks turned into judgmental and angry comments. My wife's pregnancies are very brutal on her, and they would gossip behind her back that she was being a hypochondriac because Leah's pregnancies weren't that bad. There was one time when my dad was smoking meat one room over, so our room smelled strongly of smoking meat and charcoal. This made my wife sick and had been for a while. She asked him to stop because she didn't want to keep throwing up. He simply said that it was his house and that he couldn't stop in the middle of the process because she was sensitive. They had talks with us, crying to us and telling us that we weren't thanking them enough or that we were taking advantage of their kindness because we weren't paying enough of the bills, going back on what I referenced earlier. I changed jobs for better pay and had to go on a trip for 2 months. During this time, my wife had to put up with gaslighting and manipulation from my mother, father, and siblings. They corrected most things that she did and would regularly criticize her for how she parented or just how she did menial tasks in their spaces, even if they had given us those spaces to use as we needed. Leah would make comments about how she wanted to mentor Chrissy on how to be a better wife, mother, and homemaker because it was her Christian obligation to teach the younger generation. Now, to anyone who is thinking, man, why didn't you stand up to them? We tried to respectfully bring things that bothered us to them. But they were ignored when we did bring them up, and they were later used against us as examples of how we are unforgiving and ungrateful people because we remembered their wrongdoing. Also, you will do things you aren't proud of when it comes to making sure that you have food and a place to stay. My wife also was actively asking me to not bring things up to them as we had no one else to advocate for us to them, and her life would just be that much worse since I was away all day and they drove her to and from work. This meant that she was around them a lot more than I was, and they were always worse to her when I was away. We moved out in the middle of the year and got our own place. We were just thankful to get out from under all of their rules and judgments. After we moved out, my mother quickly became more unhinged and hateful. One event really started the ball rolling to where we are now. She was disrespectful to me in person and treated me like a child. We then promptly left her house. That night she sent me texts about something random and then out of nowhere got extremely angry at me for not responding to her. She claimed that I caused her not to be able to sleep because she was worried about our relationship and wanted us to still be okay, and that she expected we would still text every day. Now that we were out of their house and we weren't under their authority anymore, Chrissy and I didn't feel the need to avoid problems as much. We are still both people pleasers. Later that morning, when I saw what she had sent to me, I replied. She texted me at 5 in the morning on a Saturday, which I also found out had woken up my wife, who was mere weeks from giving birth. I told her that she couldn't blame me for her emotions and that it wasn't my responsibility to make sure that she feels perfectly comfortable all the time. She was the one who was disrespectful to me and that I had done nothing wrong. This blew up and was brought up by my sister 21F, who brought me aside during her boyfriend's birthday party, cussed me out, and threatened to get aggressive with me physically, all because I wouldn't apologize for my text that was supposed to be for my mother privately. After that, two of my sisters and Leah yelled at my wife for 3 hours about how horrible I was as a person, son, and brother, all while my wonderful wife kept her cool. My mother denied this, but she also said that my ignoring her texts during the roughly 36 hours that I was at work and then asleep drove her to have suicidal thoughts. After this, we pulled back from spending time with them and feeling out of our depth. We talked to a professional counselor and several older mentors we trusted and who had gone through something similar. They helped us write out boundaries and to send them to our parents. This is what we sent them. Due to recent events, we realized we need to set some boundaries. These boundaries have been looked at and prayed over by respected professionals to ensure they were not hateful or unkind, but that they were honest and fair. We love you guys and hope you can understand these boundaries are not to punish you, but to protect us. If you choose to share issues about me or my wife with my sisters, we will not be discussing it. It is inappropriate for issues you have with either of us to be shared with the girls. Mom, we understand that the situation before the party brought you to have suicidal thoughts. However, we cannot take responsibility for your emotions. We would implore you to look for help from elders or a trusted counselor concerning that issue. We won't be having any more conversations about how we don't go to your church. We have chosen not to go there. We are not okay with you discussing your issues with us with our children. Things like I would take you to church but your daddy won't let me, Mom, are not okay. If you have issues with us, you may speak to both Chrissy and I privately. Mom, you will not ask Chrissy to keep anything from me anymore. If you don't want something shared with me, don't share it with my better half. We will ask for advice if it is wanted or needed. Please don't share if we don't ask. Mom, if you choose to use a tone or get passionate with my wife, we will be leaving wherever we are with you. I expect you to give her the respect she gives you by staying calm and using a respectful tone. It may be a while before we want you guys to watch our son without us being present. I understand this may seem contradictory to you watching him before. In honesty, when you said that the situation before the party made you have suicidal thoughts, which made us feel very uneasy about leaving him with you. Another reason is how you and the girls talked about me at the party. That was very disrespectful. However, we love you guys and believe that, with time, there can be restoration in our relationship. While you are with our son, do not correct him. Chrissy or I will take care of it. Again, these boundaries are not to punish you but to protect us. It does not mean we are not incredibly grateful for all the love and support you have shown us. We, however, need healthy boundaries so we can continue to have a relationship with you. I also want my family to stay emotionally healthy as a unit. We hope you can respect where we are coming from. These words are said in love. We love you guys very much. That was what we sent. What followed was a barrage of texts from my mother. My father showed up at my house the next day and cussed in front of my son. We did not cuss back at him, nor are we okay with cussing around our son. He called my wife a liar in front of my son and threatened to throw away all of our things that were left in his storage unit if we didn't get them out the same week. I said okay, got my things and distanced myself. All while getting texts from my mother that included comparing me to her abusive father, her whole life and emotionally abusive friend. Among other reasons, she was upset because we didn't run our boundaries by her or ask her if they were okay. She sent my wife nasty texts. For a while we tried to defend ourselves, but eventually gave up. Soon after, the company I worked for shut down and we moved out of state. While still getting texts about how horrible we were almost daily from my mother. Then one day my dad stole money out of my bank account, leaving my family with just a few dollars. He eventually did give it back after I repeatedly told him to. I called the bank because he was not supposed to have access. They apologized and revoked his access immediately. We switched banks. That same night he texted me and said as long as I am married to Chrissy, we won't be able to have a relationship. After this we went no contact, refusing to reply to hate or manipulation or victimization. We have continued to get nasty emails from my mom. She also messages Chrissy's parents begging for pictures and telling them they are terrible people. We have gotten calls and texts from family and friends telling us we need to apologize and remove our boundaries or just give them another chance. However, we have not done this. I give all that background to give context to what is happening now. My mom is begging for a relationship and has been for most of the time we have been gone. But she can't help but try and manipulate us into giving her an answer. So, every time a week or so has passed since she has sent something backwards and manipulating while saying she just loves us and wants relationship with us, I will be about to send her an email and then she will send something else hateful or telling me she is giving up on our relationship or something else like that. Because of this pattern, it has been a long time since I have reached out to either of them. I'm not even sure I want a relationship with either of my parents anymore. I am debating on sending one last email to my mom, and this is what I want to ask about and to hear different perspectives on. She keeps claiming that she doesn't know why I listen to my wife instead of her, and she doesn't understand why I don't listen to her perspective so I can get the whole story. I want to tell her what she has done that is manipulative or self-victimizing and that they are in fact those things. I want to tell her how she has hurt me, that it wasn't my job growing up, to make her feel comfortable. I want to lay it all out. I feel like it would be helpful to my mental health. I currently have DID, and I want to tell her that the cause was her incessant need to have me make her comfortable and be her prized child and always be the example and to fit exactly into what she wanted. Not just be who I was. I want to tell her all of the things that no one else is willing to tell her. How she favored the girls because she was, as a child. I'm very hurt and have been for a long time. I want to give her one last chance to change, and I think the only way left for that to happen is to be brutally honest with her. But am I just wasting my time? Is this a bad idea? Have any of you dealt with something similar that could shed some light on something I can't see? Anything helps. I appreciate any perspectives on this from anyone who has dealt with something like this. Thanks ahead of time for any comments and opinions.